Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
Baruch haba, welcome everyone. Welcome to the many of you gathered here in the chapel, and also to those joining us remotely. Your presence is felt in this chapel as well. This is not where any of us expected to be today when the week started. The sudden passing of Richard Shavelson came as a shock to family and friends. You know, Susie told me that she was recently at a funeral with Rich, and there people kept saying nice things about the deceased. Rich then wondered aloud to Susie what people might say about him at his funeral. He assumed that the best thing that people would say about him was, in fact, that he was married to her. And while this was for sure a wise decision on his part, today we set our intention, our kavanah, onto him and lift up the totality of Richie's memory. We honor his life, we celebrate his impact, and we form a community of consolation around his family as they process this loss, who, God willing, can feel the support of all of us who are here today in loving support of this family. Rich was a loving father to his children, to Amy and to Jared, and grandfather to Piper, and brother to Paul, and of course, a loving husband to Susie. I didn't know Rich in life, but I have had the privilege of knowing Susie for many years as I came to support the work of the Sari Isdaner Early Childhood Center at the Catch JCC, where Susie was a beloved institution for decades. My name is Rabbi Nathan Weiner. I'm the Director of Jewish Outreach and Engagement at the Jewish Federation of Southern New Jersey and its family of agencies, including the Catch JCC. And it's an honor on behalf of myself, my husband Sam, my family, the Federation, the JCC, and the Jewish people to be here with you today to mourn alongside you. When I met with the family yesterday, I learned some of what made Rich so special. One of the first questions I asked the family was, what was he called? How did people refer to him? What name did he use? And that was the reaction I got. They, amidst tears, all began to laugh, saying that there were a number of names that he had. I was told that to his mother of blessed memory, when she was upset with him, she'd call him Richard. He was Rich to his colleagues. He was Richie to friends and family. To his kids, he was Dad. And if someone in the house was upset with him, he was another abbreviation for Richard that I was asked not to share. So I publicly apologize to you. Amy told me that I believe it was 6 people who in the last few days communicated to her that they regarded Rich as their best friend. He had an impact deeper than he could ever understand. He was an avid record collector, gardener, and storyteller. and, as I came to understand, quite a personality. Amy continued by telling me that there was nothing that he couldn't fix with bungee cords and duct tape. But then Jared quickly jumped in to say, except that nothing ever actually got fixed. I learned that he loved to be with family and friends. I learned from Sally that he always had a way of focusing on the positive. I heard stories of his love of tennis from when he was younger, going to college on a tennis scholarship. I learned about how he would always move pictures around the house, inside the house, and how he could find humor in anything, and I hope I'm not stealing anyone's thunder by saying this, how he never let the facts stand in the way of a good story. More seriously, though, I learned that recently, in a private moment with Susie before having a stent put in, he reflected that no matter the outcome of that procedure, he felt secure in that moment that he had lived a great life, stating how much she, their children, and Piper meant to him. He said, naming them each by name, that they were his world. We hold the unexpectedness of this loss against his awareness that his life had depth and value, and that he just recently reflected positively on the totality of his life. So more formally today, we remember Richard Shavelson, Yosef ben Moshe, Zichrono Livracha, of blessed memory. He's of course survived by his wife Susie, his daughter Amy and granddaughter Piper, his son Jared and Jared's fiancée Sally, his brother Paul and Paul's partner Beth. May your love and support for one another, God willing, carry you through this difficult loss and transition. Today, the goal for our time together is multifold. We are first going to symbolically conclude the mitzvah of kavod hamet, of honoring the deceased. And for most of our time together today, as I said, we keep our kavanah, our intention, on Rich's memory. Closer to the conclusion, we're going to shift and become a community of consolation for the mourners as they say for the first time in his memory, the mourner's Kaddish. It's customary to recite Tehillim, Psalms, and I'm going to recite Psalm 23, a psalm used universally across the Abrahamic faith traditions at moments of grief and loss. I'll read it first in the Hebrew, followed by a standard English translation. If you'd like to and are comfortable doing so in either language, you're welcome to say it with me. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, bin oteshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yinahaleni. Nafshi yeshoveh v'yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech bogetz al mavet lo irara ki atai madi. Shivtecha u'mishantecha hema yinachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulcha neged zorarai. Tishanta v'shemen roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen v'amen. From Kohelet chapter 3, Ecclesiastes, for everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what has been planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time for silence and a time for speaking. We've come to what is most certainly a time for speaking as members of the family offer words of a hesped or a eulogy to raise up Richard's honor and dignity. You're going to hear from three members of the family who I'm going to invite up together. His children, Jared and Amy, and his brother Paul. You'll first be hearing from Jared, then Paul, and then Amy. Please come up.
I'm going to keep this short. It already kind of feels like an eternity. So for those who don't know me, I'm Jared. I'm Rich's son. I left a long time ago, so a lot of you know my mom and never saw me. Heard a lot of stories about me, I guess, since everyone told me as they were walking by, but this is who I am. It means the world to me and my family to see how many of you have come here to celebrate my dad's life. Whether you live local, you've traveled, you're watching the live stream or the recorded stream at a later date. I want to say thank you, and we're all here to celebrate Richard, Richie, brother, uncle, dad, pop, or any other name you might have called him. And this is from my mom. He would be shocked to see how many people are here. He always thought he only had 3 friends in his family, so that's true. I don't know that he would want this, but this would blow him away. He would be much better at this part than I am, so I'm just going to try and make him proud. Usually I'm sitting in the back behind the drums without a mic, so I don't have to do this part. I don't know, Nathan, maybe you can come and take care of this for me, but this is not fun. I don't know how you do this. Actually, there was a time I was sitting behind the drums playing some loud music, probably out of tune in the basement, some terrible punk songs or something. And instead of him coming down and telling us to knock it off and stop bothering him and the neighbors on a lovely Saturday afternoon, he decided to turn the lights out. And I think, Mike, wherever you are, Guessman, you were there too. He turned the lights out, found some black lights, plugged them all in, found dry ice. I don't know where this came from. Surrounded the basement in dry ice, and we quickly found out that black lights and dry ice don't mix well together. And so they were just exploding all over the place, and he loved it, and it was great. And we felt so damn cool, and I've just been trying to find that rush ever since, and I don't know, no other stage has really met that expectation yet, but that's what he would do. He would just go all in. Whatever he was committing to, he would do. As we all know, he struggled with scleroderma for a long time, which made things very hard for him. And from the constant pain, the side effects of the medications, he had some struggles. But he always tried to smile and push through and not let any of us know how bad it really was. I definitely didn't know. He would downplay it all. It was his friends and his family that kept him going. He talked very highly of all of you, every single one of you. Every accomplishment you had, no matter how big or small it was to you, they were huge to him, and he would brag to everyone about each one of them. He loved all of you. He wasn't one for always saying it, that cut and dry. Maybe he would, but he would say it in every breath of every story. And God, did he love a story. A good, slightly exaggerated story, and I'm sure all of you are thinking of one right now. So if you are, I would encourage you to come back to the house later and just share it with everybody with his embellishments, please. I just want to close this out with paraphrasing something that a close friend of mine said to us yesterday on a phone call. Everything is cyclical. We all are too. These bodies are temporary, but the souls are eternal. This isn't the first time we've met, and it won't be the last.
I'm Paul. I'm Richie's brother, and so proud of his kids. Susie, your community, being here like this. I'm sure if I asked anyone out here of a story from my brother, they would have something really amazing to say. Its legitimacy might be questioned, but it would be amazing, I'm sure. But I must thank my brother for all the brotherly love and lessons. His passion for life and laughter was instilled in our family from a very early age. So, of course, the laughter, he dies on April Fool's Day. I'm still waiting for him to call and claim it's a prank, because that's the way we were. Our young lives weren't perfect, but it came damn close. The joy and security of sharing two remarkable parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends set the bar very high for good feelings and a good life. Fun on top of fun. My brother. I remember a Hanukkah present when he was about 11 and I was about 6 that seemed a stretch, but maybe appropriate. My parents got us a Morse code set, a telegraph set, that we had to drape wires all over stairways through the house, and it took forever. And, the cables had to go through banisters, and then after all of that, we had to learn Morse code, which was unbearable. But my brother and my mother had the upstairs bedroom. My father and I were in the basement. And I heard my mother cackling through the house. And through a bunch of buzzes and beeps and dots and dashes, finally a message. And my father's there translating and transcribing. And the message was, "This is taking far too long. I have to go to the bathroom. Over and out." It was like that. It was just always like that. As we got older, the hijinks became more dangerous. Like me being his crash test dummy. But you're forgiven. Let me reiterate the facts. This is not Richie's spin. This really happened. He was 10, and we built a splintery racing car out of fence scraps and baby carriage wheels, a rolling plank, with a rope steering cable attached to nothing. In hindsight, it was probably a prototype. And our entry was to race the neighborhood, our gang kids, with equally well-designed contraptions. I was the lightest and the dumbest, so I got in and braced myself. Richie gave me a push and was to run beside me down O'Toole Street in Westwood, past our house into the dead end. I remember the push and Mercer, the adrenaline flow state, then slowly coming to in a pile of debris. Richie and the rest of the R Gang competitors finally caught up to me, and they were huffing and puffing and screaming. Half blinded, my big bro helped me to the house, where my mother, who had a little bit of a sixth sense, was already out the door surveying the riotous mayhem. Richie was trying to explain to her that it looked a lot worse than it was. But she already passed out. She was flat out. And there was a board nailed to my forehead. And being Rich, of course, he took the responsibility, but assured me at the same time, we won. Well, you did win all the races, Rich. Sure, more time would have been welcomed. But the time you had up to recently was quality time. Real quality time. Susie, Amy, Piper, Jared, Sally. Your love will carry on his tradition. It will take scores of people for me to free associate with because no one would know what the hell I was talking about. Like soda fountain, noogies, bediddle, our pharmacy, the code, walk Ringo, hit a cop. No, I didn't punch him. I ran him over. High school tennis team, con jobbing you out of your Passover socks. Beach Haven, having your GTO totaled, overdosing Butch. That was the dog. See what I mean by quality time? It was just quality time. And it was all you, brother. And we'll be together forever. As we know, people believe in whatever they want to believe. Me, there's no accidents. You had to be my brother. Your family values, sense of life, and endurance that far exceeded any prognosis. He was really sick, and most of you don't even have a clue, and for how long. And your love for laughter lives on. Love you.
Finding the words for today has been a struggle. Clearly not because there's any shortage of material, but rather how do you condense the sheer volume of content that a lifetime with my father amasses into just a few short paragraphs. Over the past few days, so many of you have shared so many stories with us. Some are new, some are old favorites, some are long forgotten. Thank you. We've needed these. They're healing, and they're funny. Most of the time, they are so damn funny. And through them, I was trying to find this narrative. I was trying to find, what one of these 36 different threads could I possibly unravel and create some continuous storyline out of, because I have very big storytelling shoes to fill. But the narrative started to emerge because my dad, he was the best storyteller. And when he told a story, it wasn't just the words, it was a physical act of service that he was performing. His stood from seated, and his arms would fly, and his tone of voice would, change with it all. I mean, it was a full physical act of service that he was performing. And when he couldn't help himself but to laugh at his own story, he'd cup his hand over his mouth, and his eyes were still be smiling, so big behind his big hands. And he'd giggle this giggle that was almost not as good as Anderson Cooper's, but it was almost up there with this. It felt like a prize just to get that giggle out of him and just to hear that giggle behind his hands, maybe a couple fists pounds, as he's doing it. But what I'm really hoping right now is to hold that giggle in the soundtrack of my mind forever, to remember exactly what that giggle sounded like. Like Rabbi Nathan said, no less than 6 of you have shared over the past few days that he was not one of your best friends, but he was your best friend. He made being a best friend easy. And as I thought about what common thread could be pulled here today, I realized he wasn't just a great storyteller. It wasn't like he observed and the world happened around him, and then he did a great job of telling some slightly altered version of that story later. The stories are there to be told because my dad was an active participant in every single one of his relationships and in every encounter with every one of you. And his superpower was in making sure that every interaction with him became a memorable experience for you. He was thoughtful and generous in gentle and authentic ways that I don't think he ever even really had to think about. They just came naturally to him. When I took up golf a few years ago and got my first set of clubs, he had custom ID labels made, and he brought them to me and sat down and diligently showed me exactly where the best placement for each label on the club would be, because this, like everything else, was an exercise in precision, and methodology mattered. When one of my dearest friends was experiencing a health issue that he had his own personal experience with, a care package arrived at her home from him, full of all of the things that he had found most helpful in dealing with his own condition. He told me he loved me all the time, and in exactly the same way. I love you, baby doll. And as important and meaningful as those words were, they really just served as backup for all that his actions had already shown. I witnessed his tremendous capacity with love with so many. When I was starting high school, he told me my life was going to change when I found my people there. And in witnessing the bond amongst his own high school buddies, I understood exactly what he meant. He set the bar high for what a model of a lifelong friendship should be. When I was leaving for college, he told me, just wait. You're about to find yourself. You're going to figure out who you really are. You're going to figure out where you really fit into this world. And the people who you find there are going to be the ones who do that with you. And observing his relationships with his college friendships who have remained his anchor at sea for the past 50 years, again, I understood. Jar, I know you think he didn't understand you, but he was so proud of everything you ever did. And if he didn't understand what it was at first, he Googled the shit out of it until he knew more than any of us really understood how he knew. And when it came to Mom, 3 months ago, he told me that when he met her, he was enjoying his 20s. He was in no rush to become a grown-up and in no rush to settle down. But when he met her, he knew he was one in a million and he had to get his act together. And for the last 47 years, he's never forgotten that. And almost 6 years ago, he was elevated to the role that I think suited him best of all. He became Pop to his beloved granddaughter, Piper James, and promptly melted into a 6'2" puddle of absolute mush. Vacation Rich was the version of my dad that showed up a day or two after getting to any beach destination. Mostly the Cape, but really any beach. He grew a little stubble, his tan started to emerge, his skin warmed up, and his entire disposition changed. His body language relaxed, his ever-analytical mind was at rest as it could be, and the best part for us was he became agreeable as hell. As much as he worked so hard to stay positive for everyone else in the last year or so, like Paul said, I don't think anybody really knew how uncomfortable and how sick he really was. His body did not allow for many moments of comfort or relaxation. So wherever he is now, as he navigates this third day of reprieve from the pain, the uncertainty, the body that betrayed him, and this obligation to optimism, I want to imagine that it's Vacation Rich that has emerged. May eternity bring endless sunshine, solid tunes, big bottles of Coke, and bags of M&Ms. We'll be watching you and waiting for your signs, so please get settled fast and come visit when you can, Daddy. Love you.
I swear I don't like this. But, my mom wrote one, so I'm going to read it for her as best as I can. And whatever I can't finish, I'll see if one of them can finish for me. Thank you all for coming here today to honor Rich. he would be totally shocked to see the outpouring of love for him. You were all a part of many parts of his life that he loved so much. Richie was always most proud of his children, Piper, and family, but he also loved and adored his friends, especially those going back to the Jacksonville University days, golf buddies, work friends, and his chosen family friends. He was so proud of his career in animal health and kept friendships with people he worked with over so many years. He loved all the travel he got to do for work. Each trip came home with a great story and a lot of laughs. Some stories with exact details and some with embellishments. There's a theme, you know. As he would say, why let the details get in the way of a good story? He was so proud to work with Pfizer and Sumitomo, and he felt a great sense of accomplishment. Rich loved his vinyl collection, his knowledge of music, musicians, records, concerts, and following Jared's music career gave him great joy. He would actually beam when talking about his own record collection. Golf and working in the yard were two of his passions. He would spend hours in the yard. He loved being the neighborhood watch. But he would drop anything at any time to play golf with his buddies. Any day, over 55 degrees, anytime. He enjoyed his breakfasts with Nate, lunches with the boys, and getting together with friends from all of his walks of life. He truly cherished his friends and deeply missed those no longer with us. Speaking of friends, he always loved and welcomed Amy and Jared's friends. He loved the way they would come to the house and hang out, fill the house with noise and laughter, and just always felt comfortable coming in, even if Jared or Amy were not home. Some of you probably still have a key or access to the house, I imagine. You too, yeah. But nothing made him more proud than his family, Amy and Jared. He was so proud and supportive of their life choices and would scream it from the mountaintop. He loved and welcomed Sally to our family and looked forward to visits in California. Next was his deep love for Paul, Aria, Mercer, and Beth, Sandy, Steve, Lara, and Harper. Piper and Harper are what kept him motivated to push through difficult times in recent months. Finally said, one of the best things he ever did was go on that blind date 50 years ago with that girl from the Bronx. Just in the past 2 weeks, he said he had no regrets and a wonderful life. After all, he had me, speaking for my mom, Amy, Jared, and Piper. And that's more than anyone else could ask for. He loved you all.
These beautiful thoughts and memories and dedications in mind that we move to the central prayer of a Jewish memorial service, El Malei Rachamim. The body is temporary, but the soul is eternal, and we pray for full and complete rest for Richard's soul. I'm going to read it first in the English, followed by chanting in the Hebrew. I invite you, if you're physically able, to please rise. O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant true rest upon the wings of the divine presence in the exalted spheres of the holy and pure, who shine as a resplendence of the firmament to the soul of Richard Shavelson, who has gone to his eternal home. For charity has been donated in remembrance of his soul. May his place of rest be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore may the All-Merciful One shelter him with the cover of God's wings forever, and bind his soul in the bond of life. Adonai is his heritage. May he rest in his resting place in peace, and let us say, Amen. El male rachamim, shochen bamromim, hametzei menucha nechona, al kanfei hashchina, b'ma'alot kidoshim utehorim, kezohar harakia mazhirim, et nishmat Yosef ben Moshe, shehalach le'olamo. Ba'avor shenadvu tzadaka, ba'ad hazkarat nishmato, began eden tehe menuchato, lachen bal harachamim yastirehu beseter kenefav le'olamim. Bitzror hachayim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach al mishkavo b'shalom, v'nomar Amen. Please remain standing as we now shift our intention, having symbolically concluded our obligations to Richard. We form a community of consolation around the family as they say for the first time in Rich's memory the Mourner's Kaddish, which is a prayer that doesn't speak of death. It's mostly in Aramaic. It ends with a prayer for peace in Hebrew, but it speaks words of praise. And these praise words are a mitzvah to be said. And when we go about the world doing mitzvot, we get the credit for having performed that sacred act. Except you wouldn't be performing this had he not passed. Therefore, he gets the credit. So in a way, it's a comfort to the family to know that the goodness that we heard so clearly communicated about what he brought into the world and the impact that he had, in the Jewish tradition, doesn't end with death. It continues through those who carry forward his stories, carry forward his best attributes, and the very best of who he was and what he brought into the world. And God willing, may that be our intention as we elevate his soul through the Kaddish. If you're comfortable and wish to, you're welcome to say it with me. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, bi'alma divra kirutei v'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudesha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who ordains peace in the heavens inspire us to be God's partners and agents for peace on earth, for us, for all the people of Israel and all inhabitants of the earth, and we say, Amen. Please be seated. Our formal time together here at the chapel is drawing to a close. A few announcements. Donations in lieu of flowers, the family asks, may be made to either the Scleroderma Research Foundation, which there's a link in the obituary on Platt Memorial Chapel's website, or to the charity of your choosing. The family also welcomes guests, family, and friends back to the family home at 510 Fireside Lane in Cherry Hill. Make sure when you put it in your nav, you use Fireside Lane. There's a Fireside Street and a Fireside, many things, all in close proximity to one another. So 510 Fireside Lane in Cherry Hill. Immediately following, there will be an afternoon service, a Mincha Shiva Minyan at 5 p.m. Visits of consolation continue tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. Any of those days, please, after 11 a.m. Hamakom. Thank you. The information for Shiva can be found on handouts in the lobby to be able to take with you, with directions and the address and times, and contributions as well. And I conclude my part by offering, along with anyone else who wishes, to the family the traditional words of consolation. We say, Hamakom Yenachem Erchem Betoch Sha'ar Avelei Tzion V'Yerushalayim. May the Holy One of Blessing have comfort for you, together among all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. And may Richard Shavelson, Yosef ben Moshe, Zichrono Livracha, may his memory be an everlasting blessing.